The Dyatlov Pass incident occurred during the rule of the Soviets over Russia, and although there were no eyewitnesses or survivors to what actually happened, the Soviet Army did investigate the incident and locate the bodies of the 9 hikers. Soviet investigators at the time determined that only a, quote, compelling unknown force had caused their deaths, and for 3 years after the incident, from 1959 through 62, the Soviets forbid access to the area to skiers and hikers. When Soviet investigators went looking for the hikers who failed to return on schedule, they first found the hikers' tent that was apparently cut open in the back with a knife. The hikers appeared to have fled through this same hole without their shoes, some wearing only socks and others barefoot in the heavy sub-zero conditions. The investigators eventually found all 9 bodies at the edge of the snow-covered forest. The corpses showed no signs of struggle, however, 2 of them had fractured skulls, 2 had broken ribs, and one of the hikers was missing her tongue. According to investigators, 4 of the victims' clothing had substantial levels of radiation detected on them. Now, the official report said that there were no signs of struggle. I assume that means there was no scuffling prints in the snow or anything that they could relate to signs of struggle, but clearly the physical injury says otherwise. And the reason that I say this is because the woman that was found missing her tongue was also found with multiple quarts of blood within her stomach, which shows that she was still alive during the time of the removal of her tongue. And another quirky little side note about these injuries, especially the broken ribs in the chest, there was no external bruising or impact wounds that went along with these broken bones, showing that something crushed the bones from within their own bodies. Thus, I assume, is where the term compelling force comes from in the official reports. The hikers had apparently, for some reason, established a campfire a few meters down from their actual camp, to which they had walked to and from multiple times throughout this incident. And to make things even more bizarre, down by this campfire area there was a large pine tree that they were underneath, of which had its branches snapped up to 5 meters high. Not taken off, just snapped down as if somebody had climbed up or something had snapped them from high up. There were also observations from the local people who saw some unidentified flying objects during the night of the hikers' deaths, aka orange orbs. And years later, members of the search party spoke out. According to their testimony at the time of the incident, strange orange spheres or orbs were seen floating in the sky during their investigations. And this to me is one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle as far as figuring out what exactly happened. Now, these next few incidents that I'm going to talk about have some pretty graphic images, so I'm not going to post a whole lot of them on here. Instead, I'm just going to talk about them and the key points that I feel are related to the Dyatlov Pass incident. I'll let you guys be the judges yourself, but it seems pretty obvious to me that something in relation is going on here. Now, this next incident that took place in March of 1956 at the White Sands Missile Test Range in New Mexico is pretty wild, but just see if you can see the similarities here and connect the dots with me. Major Cunningham and Sergeant Levette were out on a field downrange from a launch site looking for debris from a missile test, when Sergeant Levette went over the ridge of a small sand dune and was out of sight for quite some time. Major Cunningham soon heard Sergeant Levette scream in what he described as pure terror. The Major, thinking Levette had been bitten by a snake or something of that nature, ran across the crest of the dune and saw Sergeant Levette being dragged up into what he thought was a large silvery disc which hovered about 15 to 20 feet into the air. Major Cunningham described what appeared to be a long, snake-like object which was wrapped around the sergeant's legs and was dragging him into the craft. Cunningham admittedly froze as the sergeant was dragged inside the disc, and it shot up to the sky very quickly. Major Cunningham then got on the Jeep radio and reported the incident to Missile Control, whereupon Missile Control confirmed a radar sighting. Search parties went into the desert looking for Sergeant Levette. Major Cunningham's report was taken, and he was admitted to the White Sands Base Dispensary for observation. The search for Sergeant Levette continued for about 3 days, at the end of which his nude body was found approximately 10 miles downrange. The body had been mutilated, the tongue had been removed just like in the Dyatlov incident, an incision had been made just under the tip of the chin and extended all the way back to the esophagus and larynx. He had been emasculated and his eyes had also been removed. Also, I forgot to mention there was one member of the Dyatlov crew that was missing both of the eyes. There was no sign of blood within Levette's system. The initial autopsy report confirmed that the system had been completely drained of blood and that there was no vascular collapse due to death by bleeding. An autopsy subcomment was added that, quote, "This was unusual because in anybody who dies of bleeding or in the case of complete blood loss, there is always vascular collapse." And also noted was that when the body was found, there was a number of predatory-type birds that were within the area that were all dead and apparently had died after eating and trying to partake in the sergeant's body. From all indications, this body had been exposed to the elements for at least a day or two. The New Mexican sun in the desert is extremely hot and debilitating under normal circumstances. Major Cunningham was initially accused of murdering Sergeant Jonathan P. Levette, but charges were later dropped due to, well, the obvious. Now, I just wanted to make this video just to show the similarities between certain abduction cases and the Dyatlov Pass incident. The similarities are pretty obvious if you ask me. I'm going to share one more story before I cut the video, and this one's pretty wild too. This story is from a man named Bill English, who states that he was a part of a Special Forces investigative team that went in to retrieve an aircraft which went down in the thick Laos jungle territory. This took place when Bill was serving as a Green Beret captain in Laos in 1969 to 71. The plane which his 10-man team was sent to investigate was one of the B52 bomber class. Communications had been received from the B52 before it went down in the effect that it was, quote, under attack by a UFO, a large light. The plane was eventually found intact, sitting in the jungle. There was no swath indicative of a crash landing. Only the bottom of the fuselage showed any damage at all. There was no damage to the underside of the engine pods either. Although the plane was completely intact, the crew inside was dead. They were found sitting in their safety harnesses, yet were mutilated, apparently with some corkscrew patches of skin sliced from the neck and jaw, eyes and tongue and genitalia removed, with extremely precise surgery, and no blood was spilled anywhere. So basically all of these stories have a few things in common. The lights in the skies, the same type of mutilations taking place, the tongue removal, the eye removal, and they're all somewhat military related. Even the Dyatlov Pass incident, that was a military area if you look into it. So thank you for watching. I'll be back with another video, and hopefully you like it.